Hi, welcome to welcome to musicmoose.org. I'm DJ James. Today what I want to talk about is taking dominant seventh chords and altering them. The beauty of the dominant seventh chord is that you can do anything you want to it, and so long as you have the guide tones in there, guide tones, remember those are my two keywords to everything. So long as you have the guide tones in there which define the quality of the chord, you can put just about anything else in there and turn the chord into something that's just really funky and really cool. Today what I want to do is start off by taking your standard A7 chord. Now let's play it in a full voicing. There's a full voiced A7 chord. What do we have in there? Well, we have a root, fifth, seventh, third, doubled fifth, and then a doubled root. Okay. What we can do with the dominant seventh chord, like I said, is we can begin to alter it. The theoretical reason that we can alter dominant seventh chords is that, if you remember when I talked about tritone substitutions, which was a bit of an earlier lesson, I said so long as the guide tones are in there, we can substitute bass notes, we can substitute all sorts of notes and create sort of big chords that really fill out the sound. And I also said that the dominant seventh chord is something that, as an accompanist, your job is to supply the guide tones and then let the soloist or let whoever else is playing ahead of you, maybe another rhythm instrument, another comping instrument, fill out how that chord sounds. Very, very rarely in jazz will you hear a dominant seventh chord that is completely unaltered. And what I mean by that is that it has no notes of the upper structure, has no chromatic alterations, has no outside notes. Almost all the time you'll hear something in there that's meant to give it some sort of color, even to the point of sometimes you might not even recognize it. What's available to alter our dominant seventh chords? Well, if you take a look at the written part of this lesson, I have listed all of the available alterations for a dominant seventh chord. And the available alterations, we'll start with our A7. Our available alterations are, first of all, a B flat, which at this point I'm going to put in the bass. Now, you might hear that a bunch of different ways. You can hear that as the beginning of a B flat diminished, and hold on to that for a second because I'm going to talk to you about why we can consider that a dominant chord. You can hear that as maybe the outside notes of some sort of a B minor 6. But we can also hear that as an A7 altered as well. How can we hear those two chords as an A7 altered? Well, if we start with the A7, first thing we're doing is doing a 9-for-1 substitution. That means we're going to put a ninth in the chord for the root of the chord. And in this case, we're going to flat the ninth and put in a flat 9. So now the notes of this chord, we still have the G and the C sharp that define it as an A7, still give us the quality of the dominant, and in this case it's an A7, and then we put in a flat 9 as well, the B flat. Now if we add some top notes to that, if we throw in what would be the fifth of the chord, the E, we get an A7 flat 9 with a flat 9 in the bass, a flat 9-for-1 substitution. But, you can also hear that as a B flat diminished 7. Why? Because we have the B flat right there, and then a little bit up higher, we've got ourselves a G. Right there we've got the D flat, and there we've got an F flat or an E, depending on how we're spelling the chord, depending on what the root is. If the B flat is the root, then we're going to spell this an F flat. So we could consider it a B flat diminished 7. Or we could consider it an altered A7, an A7 flat 9. Now, say we wanted to drop in our pinky there and add an F instead. Well, now we have something that we could think of as a mess of different chords as well. But for our intents and purposes, for altering the A7 chord, what we essentially did is replace the fifth, the E that was up high, with a flat 13, with an F. So now what we have is an A7 flat 9 flat 13, again an altered dominant, which is still going to resolve to a D like any sort of A7 does. Kind of gives us a different take on that resolution. If we play it without the flat 13, if we play just the straight A7, You hear how that enriches the way that we can then resolve that chord? Why does it enrich the resolving of the chord? Well, what it does is it gives us a lot more inner voice motion. Whereas before, our essential motion when we're resolving this A7 is the G going down to F sharp and the C sharp going up to D. Our essential resolution within that chord is with the bass going from A to D. So we've got, that's our essential resolution. But if we start to alter that 7th chord, we've got a little bit more inner voice motion. Now the bass goes from B flat to D instead of A to D. And then if we add that flat 13 in there, what we've got happening now is our F now resolving down to the D, as well as the C sharp resolving up to the D. Some other ways we can alter the chord as well is by throwing in the sharp 11. We call it a sharp 11. You may also see it written as a flat 5, which is technically incorrect. It's a sharp 11. And that we call it a sharp 11 because it's in the upper structure. If you see an A7 flat 5, that's a theoretically incorrect chord. The sharp 11 is what we should be calling it. If we throw in the sharp 11, now we have something else that's going to enrich that resolution. We could also put the flat 9 in there as well. Now take a look at my hand as I'm playing that altered with the sharp 11. That chord shape for most guitarists should look incredibly, incredibly familiar. All it really is an E flat 7 resolving down to the D, except with the 5th and the bass. So that E flat 7, even though we might think of it as a tritone substitution, we could still consider it an A7 altered. What is altered about the chord? First of all, we have the flat 9 for 1, and we also have the sharp 11 for 5 substitutions. And these are just some of the available alterations. We can also add a sharp 9, which is going to create an even more interesting sound. If we add the sharp 9 with the flat 9, well, now we're just getting silly, but we get a nice sound out of it. Especially if you put them in the bass, because we get that nice second, that grinding second interval in the bass. You might not want to use this in your lounge trio or something like that, but if you're playing free jazz or anything like that, that's really going to sort of spice up a lot of the sound. So just a little bit more theory into chord substitutions, chord alterations. As we get deeper into working with the upper structure and we start working with more voicings, you get to see how those alterations can be applied a little bit more easily on the guitar, and you'll also get to see some new voicings that can lead you down some new paths and give you some new sounds for you to play. So keep working on those alterations, keep working on those dominants, and for musicmoose.org, I'm DJ J.